of course, mental health and addiction are very much hereditary. Absolutely. And so with that, when I had the opportunity to put my name in the hat to be the host of this podcast, it's near and dear to my heart. So I wanted to, selfishly wanted to be able to hear and learn more as I went along. And not only that, but also to just, lend a hand and be a part of something really, really important. So I appreciate that. So having shared my thoughts, I'm very curious because I'm so new to this. How did this get started?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. So I've had my own share of history with mental health and addiction, just as we all have at this table. And growing up like in a culture where we didn't really talk much about these things and the stigma surrounding it, the thought that, it's in your head, you should just be able to get out of it if you're strong enough,
Sure. Yeah.
That kind of thought actually held me back a lot from getting the recovery I needed, getting the treatment I needed. In fact, like even though I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder for a whole year, I didn't listen to the doctors. I didn't believe it. I didn't even think it was a real thing. I thought it was sort of like a pseudoscience, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And that really held me back. So I'd wanted to start something like this for a long time now, so that other people who are in our shoes don't have to go through that alone, right? Don't have to face the consequences of like a society that doesn't like accept the science behind it, right? And then I ran into Chris. You want to talk about that, Chris?
Yeah, I'm Chris, one of the directors, and I met Zen a little over a year ago in treatment. I personally was at a very low spot in my life, kind of a rock bottom. Lots of events leading up to there, starting back in as early as I can remember. I thought at the time I was a perfectionist, and that propelled me through middle school, high school, up through college, graduated in Ivy League with the 4.0, and had just kept building expectations for myself. And eventually hit a point where I just couldn't do it anymore. I was burnt out. What I didn't realize is the entire time I had OCD, which was helping me very much academically, but it started to really creep into my personal life, to where I wasn't sleeping anymore. I didn't want to get out of bed. It was just a continuous rolling of thoughts over and over. And to me, this our mission, breaking the stigma, is really important because, well, one, having OCD, I was told, I thought going to a therapist, going to a psychiatrist, taking any sort of medication, that's a weakness. That means you're not strong enough to battle it on your own. And what a lot of people don't realize is a lot of addictions are also co-occurring. So with the OCD, I turned to gambling and alcohol, and that's what really brought me to the end, to where I turned to help to go to treatment, was with everything kind of compounded on itself, and I didn't really have hope to move forward until I got the professional help, started working a program, and got on the right medication. All those things together changed everything. So I think armed with the right information, and that's our goal here, is to help let people know that there is a solution, there is a way out, and there is hope. So I jumped at this opportunity to be a part of it.
Wow. Thank you all for sharing that. That's what we need to hear. We need to hear that we're not alone. We need to hear that it comes in different shapes, sizes, cultures, everything. And that's why we're here. But personally, I believe there's no such thing as coincidence. So for y'all to meet in that place at that time, look what happened. I mean, that's God. I mean, if I can say that, that's a higher power that.
Yep. I mean, talk about coincidences. I mean, you want to talk about how we met?
Yeah, I would love to talk about that. So I met Zen about 8 months ago at an outpatient program which I was very nervous about attending because I was always in denial about a lot of things. My diagnosis is anxiety and severe depression. So we got to chatting at PHP in between.
We're like, we should definitely exchange numbers.
In between breaks, we wanted to exchange numbers, but we didn't. So Zen, he was in and out, like, should I stay, should I go? And he would use me as that, that encouragement. So it was one day that I just wasn't around, and he dipped, and I never saw him again. And so fast forward this year, 4 months ago, I ran into him at a different location, but the same hospital. And so I'm filling out paperwork, and someone said Chanel, like, who know me? And it was in, and so we actually got to exchange numbers, Instagram, and we connected there, and he told me about Gold Foundation and everything that he was working on, and I agreed, and he saw something in me, and so here I am.
Amazing. Oh, wow. See, there's no such thing as coincidences. It's all meant to be.
It's supposed to happen.
And to be here right now, it's pretty amazing. We're just talking about different aspects of mental health, and really want to dig into more about how it's portrayed. It's definitely got a lot more attention, which is amazing and super important as far as our cultures are concerned. Here in North America and U.S., Canada, and a little bit of Mexico, but the awareness, that's really the word for it, is the awareness of it. Some of the things that come to my mind is, less and less being ashamed. You mentioned, like, I'm weak if I admit this, I'm weak if I do certain aspects like medication or whatever, but I guess that's a huge question is how do we address the need to not be ashamed of who we are, or what we have, or what we may think is our issue, or what may be wrong with us. It just all is a stigma, and that's kind of what we're here to discuss and maybe overcome and get past that stigma of being ashamed. So what are your thoughts about that aspect of mental health and addiction, the being ashamed of it part?
Yeah, I think it's very common. Like, when you look at the statistics, they say that 1 in 5 Americans go through some mental health disorder at some point of time. And in fact, like, even since I started this, I've been open about it, and wherever I go and talk to people, and when I'm open about it, I hear from people that, oh, hey, like, I have this disorder too, I have that condition too, so I really admire what you're doing, or things like that. But then at the same time, if we take the same people to an everyday situation, you will notice that most of us, we just keep that on the inside. Like, we just internalize it. We make up excuses, right? Like, I mean, I don't know about you guys. Like, I know for me, when I'm depressed, for instance, I can't really tell people that, hey, I just don't want to go out because I just don't want to be around people at all, because I'm an extrovert, right? And people don't get it, right?
Yeah.
So I'd make up some excuse, right? So I mean, when's the last time either of you made an excuse, right?
Yeah, plenty of times.
It's just there is a part of it which is that we shouldn't be ashamed of it, because it is you wouldn't be ashamed if you had a physical ailment that prevented you from showing up to work,
exactly,
or meeting social obligations or anything like that.
Sure.
But then the other side of it is also about society as a whole, right? How can somebody relate to the fact that somebody who's completely outgoing, who's oh, it's my best friend's, I missed one of my closest friends' weddings when I was depressed. And it's honestly one of the biggest regrets during my depressions was missing that. But there isn't a way that they can really understand that how badly I did want to actually make it, right?
Sure. Right.
So that's why I think that's why you know, we come up with other excuses that might be a little more like relatable.
Yes.
You know, oh, my car broke down, or you know, like, or like, oh, I just overslept. Oh, I'm so sorry. Like something like that, right? Like, what do you guys think?
I totally agree with that, and I think you know, the goal of our foundation is to get to a point where we don't have to talk like that to people that are not going through something similar, but getting that information out there so that they can understand it. Because the support system around someone that's in recovery, regardless of whether it's mental health or addiction, is extremely important. And if the support system doesn't understand what's going on, it's really hard for that support system to help. And for the person that's going through the addiction or mental health battle, it makes it very hard to open up if their support system, if they know their support system doesn't understand. I think that's where a lot of that coming up with excuses that they will understand and kind of beating around the bush because they know it's going to be portrayed as, okay, you're making a choice. You're being weak. Why don't you just do this other thing? Whereas,
why don't you just get out of your head, Chris?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Just don't think about it.
So to that, when you know inside there's something going on, and you know you can't address it with somebody because they just don't get it. They don't understand. They haven't experienced it. How did you come to the realization of that? And then who did you? I guess how long did it take you to find somebody that you could actually tell?
Oh,
literally, this is what's going on, and they're like, I get it.
I could talk about that. So for me, back in December, I actually tried to commit suicide, and I made an impulsive decision, very rational, wasn't thinking, very angry at the moment, had an argument with one of my wife's best friends, and it was so toxic that I felt like I didn't know how to de-escalate the situation. I didn't know how to calm down. So instead of opening up, I reflected, self-harm. And it took that moment, ending up in the hospital and then getting in the back of a police car and then going to inpatient care and being in there locked up with everybody and coming to an understanding of why am I here and how did I get here. But when I went through that treatment and I got back home, it was like, man, it took all that for me to realize that I needed help and I needed to do what I need to do to get back on the right path. And so here I am here with Zen and Chris and this foundation, and I'm able to use my voice off of that.
Yeah.
I started with social media, and then when Zen came to me and told me about all that, I was like, dang, I just admitted all of this to my whole platform. Of course I'll do it here. Like, I want to use my voice and to help normalize, mental health and everything that we go through.
I think that first of all, I'm glad you're still here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm still here too.
I mean, it
Very
took
glad.
all of that,
Yeah.
but at least we got to this point now.
Right, exactly. Let me just say that.
tough.
But that's extreme, right? That's an extreme. That's like, that makes people like wake up. That makes people aware that something is going on with you because of the choice you made to go that far, right? But I'm just wondering, with that, they saw something, they realized something, but how do they understand? How can we get people to understand without having to go to the extremes of suicide or harming ourselves? How do we keep breaking down the barrier, the stigmas, everything, to get people to understand more clearly that we don't have to have a physical ailment, like you said, a noticeable hurt or pain for it to be addressed and recognized and honored.
Yeah, and I think it all starts with like breaking that silence, right?
Yeah.
The silence around it, where like the excuses, the deflections, the ways that we don't want our job to know like anybody at our job to know that we have like a mental illness, right?
No.
Like, we don't want in fact didn't your cousins didn't your brothers and sisters didn't your siblings just say don't do this, don't share about this?
A lot of people told me not to share things because they said it'll follow you everywhere you go. Like, people won't want to work with you. And as far as me, you know, I work in education. You too, Chris. And to them, it's like, are you crazy? They think you're going to go up into school and shoot everybody. Ain't nobody want to work with you. And I was like, no, if they understand that it's a mental health condition,
right?
You know, it's something, it's serious.
And you know, the irony of that is that the fact that we're working on it makes us actually a lot safer than those who are going through the same things, but actually hiding it and and keeping it on the down low.
Yeah.
So if anything, it, like, you know, us being like, people being vocal about it, people going to treatment, that should be seen as a strength, and not as a weakness, right? Because it's about acknowledging your limitations, right? And getting the support you need, getting whatever you need to get better, rather than keeping it down until it reaches a point where there may or may not be any turning back, right? And I think we've all been there.
Absolutely. I think a big issue is the underdiagnosis, where people just don't know that what's wrong with them. You know, a lot of people just feel, you know, oh, I'm sad. I don't know why. I thought, oh, I'm just a perfectionist. Like, I need everything to be perfect. I need to remember every thought that I ever had. That's normal, right?
Yeah, and to quantify that, that's actually, you know, it's been said that, like, it's been found that less than 50% of the people who have a diagnosis actually get the treatment they need.
Right.
Yeah. And that puts like a number on that. You know, that's a lot of people. Like you were saying, a lot, but how much is that? That's
a lot.
Actually a lot.
And you know, you can't understand something if you don't know what it is. You have to have that starting point. So being able to normalize going to a counselor, going to a psychiatrist to get a diagnosis, you know, that's the first step in being able to recover, is just to know what you're dealing with in the first place. And I think that's one of the biggest issues we deal with right now is people don't want to go in because they don't have a label on whatever it is that they're going through, and they view it as, if I go into a counselor, like I'm throwing in the towel. I'm weak. I'm not strong enough to do this.
Oh yeah. For that fact too of word that popped in my head is just fear. And y'all mentioned the fact that people just don't understand because they're not in that place. So when they're not in that place, they don't have anything to touch, feel, or hold on to. It's a fear. Well, fix it, or stop thinking about it, or just get over it. All those things. But this podcast is not just for people going through their own mental illness or their own addiction. It's also for folks that may be wondering how they can support people too, wondering how they can understand and learn more things. So having statistics and having better knowledge and something to hold on to, saying, well, you know, people with mental illness having that understanding and that relief of I'm not alone, so I can have someone I can talk to. There also needs to be that for people that are needing and trying to support but don't know how to, someone with mental illness or addiction. So I think that's really huge on both sides of that equation.
Yeah. I feel like I can relate to that though. Like I feel like I'm dealing with that right now with my partner, because in the beginning it was like, I don't understand what you're going through. Like, I'm trying to, but like, why can't you just do better to fix it? And I'm trying to explain, well, it's not that easy.
Yeah.
You know, I'm dealing with anxiety. You know, it's tough, it's stressful. But in their situation, they're able to recognize what I'm going through and kind of understand it in a way that it's baby steps.
Right.
You know, they taking it day by day with me. They see that I'm trying, and so that they're trying to find ways to support me through the process, whether if it's just simply listening or taking the time to get to know what are my triggers. You know, that's a thing. You know, don't yell at me, don't accuse me, you know, things like that, having that conversation. And I think it should start with your circle first, for me. And I don't know about y'all.
Yeah, and I think it's also like, we have to like appreciate that it is difficult, right? It is difficult to relate to that. And I've been guilty, like I myself have been guilty of, you know, not understanding people like before my diagnosis, right? Because something like bipolar disorder usually, you know, you start to see the symptoms usually like between like 18 to 25-ish, you know, that range. So before that, when I was, like grew up with that stigma, and my first year in college, like I actually like, had close friends who had depression, and I never really understood it. And in hindsight, I feel like I could have been a lot more understanding to them, because I couldn't understand why somebody would be upset for no apparent reason, right? Because we're trying to like, anybody thinks in the way that they think. Like, it's like, if I were that person, I got this going on in my life, I got this going on in my life. Why would I be so upset? Why can't I like snap out of it?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's only like, for me at least, it's only after I was forced to be in that situation that I was able to understand. So it is difficult, but then I think it like a key point of it is that you gotta like understand that you can't always understand.
Yeah.
That's deep.
It is.
But like, just accept it that, okay, this person's mind may be working a little differently than mine, but the fact is that they're trying hard, and they can't snap out of it. They can't just like fix it like that. I can't just fix it like that for them. So what can I do best to support them, right?
Right.
And usually, I don't know about you guys. I want to hear about you guys, but like for me, that starts with just asking me, like, how can I help?
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's me.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It's like, it's breaking that silence, because the first conversation can be very awkward and very stressful for everyone involved. And a lot of times I have many friends and family where I there's something going on, but nobody talks about it. It's easier to just stay silent and try to help in silent ways, as opposed to tackle it head on. But doing that is so important, because someone that's in the middle of addiction or a mental health crisis, you're just treading water. You're just trying to survive. And a lot, I can speak for myself, with obsessive thoughts. They're not rational thoughts, but I think that they're rational in my brain. And sometimes I need someone to come in and say like, hey, what's going on? Do you want to talk about it? And kind of have that third party objective opinion of what's actually happening to start to get help for it.
You all mentioned you're in education, and I have my foot in that as well. And just from this conversation, I think it's important that from both sides that we catch each other doing something good. Like, you just asked for help. You just reminded me what your trigger is. You just reminded me that, hey, every once in a while, just check in, right? And back to me, hey, I noticed that you were mindful of, not triggering me today. Or
Yeah.
I noticed that, hey, you caught yourself. Or it's just that understanding each other.
On both sides, yeah.
Or
Like
fear vanishes when understanding is in the room. Fear
That's
goes
true.
away when there's complete understanding. It's not that we want to fix things or each other. It's that we don't want to be scared to hurt you more or to be hurt ourselves. It's just
Right.
depending on which side of the coin you're on or which side of the fence. Well, however you want to look at it. But I think catching each other doing good, as we do with young kids in the classroom, or raising them. I raised 2 boys myself, and not by myself. Their mom and I raised 2 kids. But yeah, just catching them doing good instead of always getting on them.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, they respond way better when you catch them doing good, and they remember that. Like, I'm gonna do that again, right?
Yeah, and my hope is that like, when enough people break that silence, and then that volume gets higher and higher, we raise that volume up. Eventually, people can't. It's not silent no more.
Exactly.
Right? And at the same time, like, we have, like, the statistics show that we have numbers going for us, right? Most, like, during our lifetime, if 1 in 5 Americans go through some mental health crisis at some point of time, that means there are so many people suffering in silence that if even like a small part of us actually start being more vocal about it, actually start, clearing these misunderstandings,
Right. Yes. Yeah.
we can really, like, make a big difference for those that come after us, right? And that's what it's all about.
That's true.
Yeah.
Can I share with y'all something that happened?
Please.
So yesterday, it was the last day of school, right? And we had like a goodbye, farewell type of thing, end of the year with the staff and faculty. So tell me why. It was something inside of me that wanted to tell them what I had been going through. So that whole time I was in and out because I tried to commit suicide, did the treatment, did PHP. So I had to take a leave, right, to get myself together mentally. And I felt like I owed them something. So I said, I apologize for my absence, but I was actually dealing with a lot of things. Tried to commit suicide, but on top of that, I had to, my stepchild had to leave and go stay with her dad because I wasn't mentally stable to do that, and my partner was off working when I tried to commit suicide.
And you told them all this?
I told them that.
Wow. That's
that
amazing.
is so brave.
That
right?
was, man,
Yeah,
that was
that's
hard
volume.
to do.
That's, they just said.
That was so hard.
The noise,
That's
that
crazy.
kind of positive noise is what is going to squash the stigma.
But I hadn't spoke about it publicly, and I
Wow,
knew
that's
that we were
amazing.
doing this. And I said, if I put my voice out and say
Yes.
it, it'd be like, okay, now I can really talk about it. So, and a lady came up to me and she said, that was so brave, and I want to thank you for doing that. But her situation was similar. Not that she tried to commit suicide, but because of her mental health, she doesn't have her child.
Oh, yeah.
And she said, I'm still fighting, which mine is different. I married into something.
Sure,
So
right.
it's just, okay, you got to do what's best for you, to take care and help co-parent. But hers is completely different, like the law,
Yes.
it's involved. And, I just felt for her. But I'm glad that I was able to bring that support to speak on it.
That's a topic.
She embraced me, and it made me feel so good. So I'm glad I broke the silence.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, it
It's
reminds
huge.
me of, like, I used to do this with my friends, like, when we're at stadiums and stuff, like concerts and things. If you start clapping and you get, like, just a few people around you to start clapping at for something, you'll notice that you can get the entire stadium to clap.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
And so it's
Groupthink,
kind of
yeah.
like ripples of like a wave and the ripples, right? And so you sharing that, already somebody came and spoke up to you. Now think about those that like resonated with it but didn't speak up to you, right? But you impacted that room.
Man, that room was
Immensely.
silent. They couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
I was like, man, what did I just do?
Oh, you
But I
did.
was happy that I did it because it was hard on me. It was like a weight on my chest.
Oh.
It just lifted off of me.
That's
Yeah.
That's so
It gave
inspiring.
me chills. It did.
wow.
But
It's
I'm
giving
glad.
me chills right now.
That's amazing.
Man,
That's
Chris,
awesome. That's awesome.
man, that was tough.
Awesome. Good on you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Like I said, the hope is that, as more people feel comfortable to share their experience, we'll all like start to realize that we're not actually all that different after all.
Exactly.
Like, in fact, like, what comes to mind is something that they say in the AA book, right? If you look for differences, that's all you'll see. But if you start looking for similarities, that's what you'll see.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. That's amazing. What resonated for me today was the noise. Was like you said, the silence is broken, right? To continue to put sound to it, not just thoughts and prayers like we hear all the time. That patronizing
Yeah.
type of comment,
Right.
but to actually have some way to understand and to do something more than just
Yeah.
patting the child on the head saying they're there, but actually, like, I can do something, and now I know that I can ask questions, or I can at least have a foothold to say, are you okay, or what is it that I can do? Just it's little, but it ripples into that whole community, that whole stadium, that whole whatever you want to give it to. But yeah, all of this
And-
noise is so important.
Yeah, and hopefully, like, our viewers as well, like, that we hopefully, like, somebody, like, there are people out there that would relate to this and feel some hope, because we've all like been there and we've come out of it, and now we're trying to like raise that voice so that like you're not alone, right? Nobody is, like, whatever you think, however, like, because I always thought my problems were just like my own, and like I'm so different, I'm this like unique snowflake, right? but none of us are, and that's the point. And hopefully, like, we broke the silence, and hopefully, like, we can get more people to raise that volume so that it won't be silent no more.
Yeah, and I think another thing, part of the foundation is putting actions towards this. So like the mental health checkup, everyone goes to the doctor, gets their checkup, but it's not frequent, or it's not a common thing to go, get an annual mental health checkup. And that's something that, needs to be normalized, because
I agree.
it's so prevalent. We need to be checking up on our mental health the same way that we're checking up on our physical health. And that's
Absolutely.
something that we'll be able to do through the Goal Foundation, is help people do that.
We got a lot coming up.
Yeah.
Right?
I like the way Chris worded that, though, because it goes back to that physical thing. It's like when they see that you're hurting and you're in pain, they like, oh, are you okay? But with mental health, they can't see it. So it's like, how do we get somebody to ask us, are we okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I like that. That's awesome. We need to have more mental health check-ins, and and not just make it a physical thing.
Yeah, for all of our viewers, what's your relationship to mental health and addiction, and do you have someone that you can rely on or talk to about all the things that you're experiencing, and how supportive are they? We don't want to blame anybody. We want to encourage people to become more of an advocate, more supportive, more understanding. And again, it's that breaking the silence and saying, maybe I don't know what to do. Well, to your point, just ask me how I'm doing. That's more than enough at the moment. And then a conversation can go into it, and we can begin to understand more and more about what all that is. And whatever you're dealing with, I think there's a way, and there's a place, and there are people that you can reach out to.
Yes.
So, as you mentioned, the Goal Foundation, you can find them on social media. Of course, you're viewing this podcast right now, so you definitely know where to go. But we'll encourage people to take the survey and to just log in and weave your way through the website and make it your own and do all those different things. So, y'all, I'm very grateful for this opportunity. Thank you for opening your hearts.
And thank you for joining us.
I appreciate the
thank you.
opportunity very much. This has been great. I look forward to what's coming up. Thank you for choosing to seek us out here again today. Next month's episode, we're going to dive deeper into cultural differences that contribute to the iniquities in mental health and addiction. So again, thank you to Zen, to Chanel, and to Chris.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. And thank you to our viewers very much. And we'll see you next month.